Well, minor technical difficulties here, ladies and gentlemen, but welcome back to your usual Monday section. This is, of course, the Ginetta GT4 Cup here at RCI TV for round 2. And we're here at a track where probably you never take a Ginetta, really. It is Bathurst. And joining us soon will be John Dalton, but also this time, new face on the in the broadcast is Kevin Boss. Welcome, Kevin.
Well, thank you very much, Ryan. Well, I've been here on the Friday before, but yeah, first time on the Monday. It's going to be some track to start out here, knowing how hectic the Ginetta Cup is, how, well, technical and difficult this track is. So yeah, going to have one hell of a broadcast here.
Also, and as we saw already in practice, we saw the fact that these cars, they top out basically dead middle of the straight as we ride on board with the 123. You'll see you get to the Pirelli sign and, well, now this is it. This is your speed. This shall be your speed right up until you get to the chase. And because you're both doing the same speed, don't necessarily outbrake one another, so it's just going to be a crazy moment as we swap over to qualifying.
Well, luckily for them, it's dry. Like, if it was going to be wet, it was going to be extra difficult. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they can do in qualifying. But yeah, also coming back to what you said about going through the chase, like, the only difference they can make is, like we said before, who's got the biggest cojones, and try and break as late as possible. But then, of course, trying to keep it on track, not hitting the curb too much, and then force something there without being a nuisance to themselves and to someone else. Yeah, we'll just have to wait and see who dares.
And I think that's, if anything, it's going to be a bit of an interesting to see what the strategy actually is, because it's Mikael Sundstrom who's out first in the 899, the nearly on pace car. I think when it, the final few tenths, when people are going to eke it out, because usually what we see is drivers get, we have big improvements, then the field kind of mellows out a little bit as people, hit the limits of their pace or the limits of the car, and it might actually be the strategy to be just far enough behind someone that you can get the toe up until the rev limiter. It gives you that tiny little bit more acceleration. It might only be like, a couple of hundredths of a second, but it might come down to that all in qualifying, and that's kind of what I'm looking for, and it'll be interesting to see what the strategy is. But the 899, he doesn't want anyone behind him. Everyone else is bunching up. Mikael Sundstrom has decided to keep the hammer down. He don't want anyone nearby, so it'll give us a good indication of what a flying lap will be when he's out in clean air.
Yeah, as he just starts to comes up to start his lap. Personally, I'd like to have a bit more of free space here, I think, just in case someone makes a little mistake. With being that close to each other, you don't really want to do that. Being that close, as we see him start his lap, going up to turn 1, which is Hell Corner. Quite a nice name.
It's quite a nice name, but it's also has been quite a source of hell in some of the races. It's quite a pinch point on the first lap. So that'll be definitely one to watch with the Ginettas, because everyone sort of jostles and fights for position all through this season. Mikael Sundstrom coming flying up into the mountain section. Don't touch the rev limiter on the first part. We might see quite a lot of slipstreaming going up the straight, because these cars just don't really have the power to get themselves up that hill. So you take away some air resistance, will help just a little bit more. Close to the walls is going to be the name of the game today without touching them, but I think a lot of these cars are going to be returning to the pits with at least a touch of damage on the left or the right hand side of the car. GT3 cars, it's basically flat all the way over here if you're very committed. GT4s, you have to take a lift. You can hear the rumble strips under the car. That is how close to the wall you need to get. Then sending out over skylines and now down the hill. This is where the dynamic completely changes. You go from fighting your lack of power to fighting the weight of the car coming down the hill. It will want to push it around, and with tyres that are not as grippy, not as heated as a GT3 car as well on lap 1, kind of struggle. And coming out onto Conrod Straight, might live up to its name and how it got its name in this race with how much these engines are going to be screaming. There goes 5th gear already on the incredibly short ratio box. There goes 6th. And now we play the rev limiter game. You can really tell that these cars were designed for British tracks. Small, you know, twisty, technical. Not really for long endurances like this one. And you can basically get all the way to the 100 board. If you're in a GT3 car, if you braked there, you're into the 4th floor of that hotel just onto us, right? But a very clean and very consistent lap from Mikael Sundstrom. Coming up to the final corner is the 899. Looks great in this low light as well, does that sort of metallic livery. Coming up to the line, it will be a 213.072 for Mikael. And do we know if that's good? Well, Christopher Streppen says it's not quite good enough.
Well, Christopher Streppen will always put in that little bit extra compared to most other drivers. It's going to be up to the others to put in a better lap. But we can see, like, the guys of Mikael Sundstrom, even though he set the lap first, still only 1/10 off. So if he can just get it a bit better in a couple other corners, he might be there. As we see, Wolf Matuszka take the top position with a 2:12.795.
Stellar times coming through, and welcome. Apologies for some mic issues earlier on in the broadcast. I thought I was talking, and apparently nothing was coming through. So all fun and games, you know how it goes. Change nothing, and then all of a sudden everything breaks all at once. So yeah, not too sure what is going on with my mic. I'm going to have to play about with it, so I will pass back over to Kevin while we try and fix these technical difficulties.
As we keep on looking at Sundstrom, and he hits the wall coming up towards the top of the mountain, and yeah, he's aborted the lap. We're now looking at Wolf Matuszka. He's just coming up the mountain, just through the last couple of corners there, up at Reed Park, Selwyn Park. Going then towards Skyline in just 2 corners time. Let's see how he wrangles this beast of a mountain. Downhill, still very tight, very twisty, very difficult, with the weight changing all the time. It could go wrong at any second, though he does seem to keep it straight here, keeps on going nicely. Let's see where his time goes. He's currently 1/10 up. Lost a little bit of time through the last couple of corners. Going down towards the dipper, onto the Conrod Straight, onto the pit limiter. We now have to wait and see how close he can get to the cars in front with that little bit of slipstream that he's got there before he hits the brakes into chase.
And while John sorts out his microphone, it's one of those days, isn't it, where we've blown all the gear out to Australia, and this is what happens. All your wires end up in a tangle, but it's going to be the 25 pink performance. Car moves over, seeing Wolf Matuszka come flying by. I think some people are actually trying to grab some slipstream. As he says, Wolf had quite a lot of time in the first sort of sector, but it sort of dwindled away a little bit over the mountain. Still managing to bring it back, but for the 25, I think it's going to be small improvement, but just about hold station. And there you go, crosses the line. It's a 2:12.7. And once again, a slight improvement, but there you go. The 373 comes in with the heavy hitting. Nearly a tenth away. It's just over a tenth and a half faster. But in a Ginetta, that time is so hard to gain.
Well, especially on a track like this with the long straights that you have, hitting the pit limiter, not being able to extract more, you will need to try and get that little bit of time in a couple of corners where it does matter, and that's especially down the mountain, where if you just push it that little bit too hard, you'll find yourself into the wall. As we're now looking with Daniel Jim for Racing Points. He's very close to the car in front. I can't really see which car that is. Is it the Parakeet car?
No, that is one of the Sim Brothers cars. That is the Jurassic car. And it's going to be interesting to see this, because at the minute, as the Sim Brothers car takes a big chunk of wall, pulls off to the outside, and that will have given Daniel Jim a little bit of a scare in the 71, I'm sure. But I was interested because this car was 2 tenths up before the slight scare. It was going to be interesting to see what the Delta might have done, you know, when it starts creeping up, being that close to the car in front, because they don't really, you know, gain a huge amount of the Ginettas. I thought the slipstream might be a little bit stronger down the straight, but evidently not. We saw in practice people got very close, but it wasn't quite enough. Maximilian Verde is also one of the cars on a huge gain over the mountain, 0.6 of a second, and if the virtual drivers by TX3 driver can keep this car on the road going down the mountain, the very difficult part, could be a very, very good for a possible provisional pole if he's got anything left in the final sector.
Well, he did lose a little bit of time through the first couple of corners in the S's down the mountains, but he's back up to 6/10 faster, going down through the dipper onto the Conrad straight. He does seem to have a little bit of a slipstream with the car ahead, but yeah, as we just said before, well, the car ahead is weaving. That does make it a little bit less powerful, but he should be hitting the rev limiter around now. Also go into the chase. And let's see, he's actually lost 600s through the straights, so he might have already had a slipstream before. Going through the last couple of corners, into Murray's corner, and then onto the final straight, and see where he ends up. It's still at 5/10. Oh, he keeps losing a little bit in that final sector, but let's see where he ends up.
Well, Maximilian Verde races to the line, and it's P4 for the French driver. You still really can't shake a stick at that. And as he says, I think that last sector coming, the time lost there must have just been the toe. Benjamin Heilman, the RCI team yellow, jumps up into P7. Very much in the train, and I think that's Dario Barzaghi in front as well. The Ballers Esports car, one of the also quite recognisable liveries. There's been a few updates up and down the grid. Sure, that we will get into a little bit later with a bit of a special car that has turned up on the grid this time in the silver class.
Yeah, and it's also going to be exciting to see where these silver class cars will end up, because we've seen in the previous races they will end up fighting with the other pro drivers, even though they're running their separate championships. They do still tend to fight with them.
Well, I mean, you look at the 123 there. Conrad is all the way up into 11th. That's nearly a top 10 position, which really can never shake a stick at at the top 10 in this field when in the same spec cars when everything is so close. That's very good going for the silver class, and everyone else is sort of filtering through. Matt Stevens has got quite a lot of pro cars separating him between the rest of the field. But then you look a little bit further down and everyone starts to bunch up again. Mike Elgrand having a little bit of time gained. This is kind of that moment that I mentioned about. The cars got up to the pressures. Everyone's kind of settled in. But now the times are small improvements here and there, but they're all starting to fall off. Some of the big improvements still yet to go. Christoph Verstappen, he's finally found it through the dipper. Whatever the number 7 was lacking before, definitely isn't now. This is 0.4 of a second up on his time, if he can hold it. And once again, we might even see where the time starts to dwindle down, because if I remember, the 7 had a toe a little bit for earlier on, and they don't have that anymore.
Yeah, it will be difficult now to gain times, though. I have seen down the order, it was Ted Edwards who had 1.3 seconds faster, though I think he just finished his lap out. Yeah, he's just starting his next one. As we see Verstappen now coming up towards the chase, still with 0.5 faster. Let's see if he can keep up on the 5/10ths or if it drops, and we see it drop just a little bit. Coming through the last corner here, onto the start-finish straight. Gained a couple of hundreds through there. See where he ends up. He gains pole position for now with a 2-minute 12.370.
So that's an absolute stonking lap, you must say, from Verstappen. While we also had his back turned and we weren't really looking about it, Maximilian Verde, the 89, went just a little bit faster with the 373. Very close chasing him down, but Wolf Matuszka, this man, he's still got one more lap to go as well. He will have one more bite of the apple, but what can he say about it? It's P2 for the big performance car, 0.2 of a second off Christoph Verstappen, but this car's looking very, very strong. But we say that, looking back at the Delta board, number 7's going faster again.
Yeah, it's insane. I don't know where he's getting this extra bit of speed from. The thing is, now he does have all this free air. Did he hit the wall there a bit? Well, looking at his Delta, he doesn't. Well, he didn't. But yeah, it's still insane where he's getting this extra bit of time from. Thinking that everyone has hit the max of the car, and then still he's able to push that type of lap out, and he keeps improving. That said, Wolf Matuszka is also improving, currently 2/10 up. So this might be a very, very tight battle for pole position.
It's going to be so as well. We see the delta start to bleed off a little bit for Christopher Streppen because he had that the almighty run through the dip the last go around. Where we saw that huge 0.4 of a second gain almost. The delta has bled off a little bit, and it's now just holding station. Wolf Matuszka behind as well had around about a tenth of a second in the bag, but as once again another driver that slowly bled off. The only car the big improvement is the 373 just behind. Now that will make this battle interesting if they can keep it together, and the number 7 charges up to the line. They might even get one more go at the lap, so that will be great news for what is right now the provisional pole setter. There you go, looking at the time. One more go around for Christopher Streppen, and I think it's also one more go around for Wolf Matuszka.
Well, Christopher Streppen did improve his time by just over a tenth, so he did gained a bit of time that he lost the last time through. But yeah, Wolf Matuszka also getting one more lap. So at the start, he's already lost a little bit of time. Streppen seems to be keeping pace. Looking at the deltas behind, there was one car that I just saw that jumped up, but I see Daniel Jim is 3/10 up. Elgaard is 4/10 up. So there are still some drivers that are gaining quite a bit of time, especially Ted Edwards is currently half a second up.
And on coming to the silver drivers as well, Conrad Jensen, the 123 races to the line. It's P9 for the 123. You said, can the silver drivers, hang with the pro drivers? Well, I think that that sort of puts the question to bed, doesn't it? Yes, they absolutely can. And Ted Edwards, as you mentioned, haven't really seen Ted this qualifying session. It's kind of been quiet, just working away on his own as the 195 Race Ventura Pigeon car. And if you're new here, we must explain. Race Ventura this season has decided to take a bird, an avian theme this go. We have the parakeet of Phil Roberts. We have Ted Edwards with the Race Ventura Pigeon. And I think there is one more, which is Grim Lilith in the, I think that's the split. Is also running a bird-themed car, all done brilliantly by McKenna. So that's some liveries that are very prominent on this season. Coming to the line, Ted's still on a big improvement, loses a little bit through the last corner, but gets the better run. And it's P20 overall for the 195 driver, just behind Nicholas Nordqvist.
Yeah, and it's still quite an improvement that late on, as we thought that everyone had figured out what their pace was. Still nice to see a silver car being able to throw it into the top 10 for now, as we see Stewie Harmon go up to P7 with a 2 minute 12.995. But yeah, it seems like no one was strong enough today to beat Christopher Streppen, now also in the RCI livery.
The last car left on the grid, running around anyway, is the 81, the Broiker. A little bit of a time lost, and it will be P30 overall for the 81. Good improvement. Qualifying just did not go this car's way, and
I'm hoping so. I've got some audio difficulties. I've no idea what my computer's decided to do. It was all fine in the pre-show. Me, Ryan, and Kevin all chatting in the box happily. As soon as the broadcast went live, the mic seemed to die. So not best pleased. Gonna have to figure that one out and maybe do a reboot and figure all that out. But onwards to tonight's action. I've missed the whole of qualifying. I can see Verstraper has managed to pole it. Torzidlo, again, P2. Matuszka, P3. Vady, P4. And Sundstrom, P5. So, a great top 5 with some big names and some big names just creeping outside. Benjamin Hellman, especially in P7, is going to be one to watch. And Bart Matcher as well. Moving up from silver, I believe, last time to the pro class.
I think we can have a look if that's true. It will be somewhere. But yeah, it's still, if you look at all the times, I'd say bar for Strepen, it's all pretty close, which will show also how close the race will be, I think, with everyone, of course, in the same make of car, same type of car, with hitting the ref limiter. it's going to be quite the interesting race, and I'm especially expecting some spiciness going down the mountain.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be super spicy, as last time out, Torzidlo took a race 1 victory from Dario Barzaghi, and Verstrepper, who was on a massive comeback drive from a lap 1 incident in P3. Race 2 went the way of our very own Benjamin Harmon, taking victory from Verstreppen and Adam Dubil, and the championship is very much wide open, and I believe, if I am right in saying so, Ryan Mawson should have some standings for us. As here we go, the Ginetta GT4 Cup Pro Class heads up with Wolf Matushka on 37 points. Christoph Verstrepper hot on his heels with 31. Jose Jimenez on 25. We then have a half-point split with Benjamin Harmon 23.5 and Marius Torzidlo on 22.5. Joe Dorber rounds up in P6 with 21. Adam Dubil with 15. Joint 7th place with Andy Boardman. Dario Barzaghi on 14.5 and Daniel Jim on 13. Moving on to P11, Albin Manson rounds in with 13 points as well. Maximilian Vede, a Virtual Drivers TX3, very good driver to keep your eyes peeled on. Obviously P4 on the grid today, 12.5 points. Bart Matcher on 12. Oliver Hagstrom Vigishu, the greatest name in sim racing. I stand by that. On 11 points, Jan Yo on 9, Mark Elgard on 5.5, Nicholas Nordquist on 4, Matthias Tornberg on 2, Mikhail Sundstrom also on 2, and Adrian Klazowski on 1 point. And rounding out your Pro Cup is Tom Shipston on 0.5 point. Jordan Daly and Michael Race is both yet to score in the championship, and Chris Downing has unfortunately signed out. Moving on to silver, Dominic Fekete leads on 34. Matthew Kingston Lee, Jesse Lee's greatest name in sim racing, on 29. Conrad Jetson on 25. Nat Shirley on 21.5, joint with Christian Lindgren. Victor Nordquist not too far behind on 21. Raphael Huell on 18 with Richard Phillips for the RPMS SimSport boys also on 18. Gonzalo Haranas on 17 and Ethan Scott also joint 17 for your top 10 in silver. And coming to the later half of silver, Matt Stevens on 15, Ted Edwards in the Movember-themed Pigeon Ginetta on 13, Phil Roberts in the Parakeet-themed Ginetta on 10.5, Cal Manzo on 8, 7.5 points. Greet your bottom three with Matthias Byron, Mike Redford and David Grunstrom. Martin Breaker on 2, and Daniel Crimson has unfortunately signed out. I believe Ryan is fiddling with the broadcast in the background. I do have a few facts from last time out at Zolder. We had a record-breaking race, and possibly not record-breaking in the way you think it might be, but we had over 150 accidents reported in 1 hour of racing. We had 4+ cars disqualified in 1 hour of racing. 60 racing incidents stroke no further action reports logged in an hour, and it took the stewards 2 hours of post-race time to finish all the reports. It, of course, wasn't anyone's fault. It's just one of those freak accidents that happen in one-make sprint races, with everybody being super competitive and wanting to make up those all-important positions in the half an hour of racing. And Kevin, I believe you raced Split 2 last time out, and I heard that maybe wasn't much better than Split 1.
But yeah, I've heard from someone who was driving Split 2. There were even more incidents there. Also, with like what you said before, it is that close already with the one-make series, and it was a 30-minute sprint race. Split 2 also had the extra carnage of having it wet throughout the entire race weekend, which didn't help anything at all.
Yeah, certainly so, especially for Split 2 drivers maybe finding it a little bit tricky in those mixed conditions at Zolder. But a little rundown of what we do have left to bring you on Monday's RCI Ginetta Cup. Next up, round 4, we fly ourselves back to a circuit much more suited to the Ginettas with Snetterton on the 14th of November. Afterwards, we pack up and head back to the Oceanic region for round 5 at Suzuka on the 21st of November, before heading stateside for round 6 at Watkins Glen on the 28th of November, before wrapping it all up back in Blighty at Donington Park on the 5th of December. So a good mix of tracks, I would say, for the Ginettas. Some kind of, much more open and long, such as Watkins Glen, and then others much more like old school circuits, such as Donington Park with the grass, the curbs, and all the fun that brings with one make racing. But tonight we of course do have our endurance, should we say, in theory, with a mandatory pit stop, 1 litre of fuel to be added, and tyres are completely up to the driver's personal preference, which of course does leave strategy wide open. But I feel tonight at Bathurst, a lot of drivers will be just dropping in that 1 litre of fuel and then heading off down the lane, minimising time spent stationary tonight.
Yeah, I guess so. I think that's going to be a trend throughout the entire championship, seeing as how much extra time you lose in the pits with getting the tires switched, because that is a full 30 seconds of stopped time. While if you only put in 1 litre of fuel, you're only, wheels up in the air for just over a second, it's dropped back down, and you're off again. So I think most drivers will consider the loss you'd have by switching the tires, and then the gain you could have as not going to be good enough in order to make the tire change a viable strategy.
Yeah, of course, tyres, those of you that are regular to ACC, tyres will cost you about 30 seconds up in the air to get all 4 boots switched over to nice new tyres. And of course, if you're not taking that, it is just, like Kevin says, a case of getting the car up in the air, dropping the 1 litre of fueling and dropping it back down again, or heading off down the pit lane like a scolded rat. And I do have a couple more facts for you. Torzidlo, our man in P2, as you see on the left-hand side of the screen in the blue car, is the only driver in Split 1 to pole the car and take a race victory, whereas Benjamin Heilman, who we see down in P7, is the only driver to win a race with the fastest lap also attached to his name for those extra all-important points. So, a couple of drivers to be keeping your eye on. Benjamin Heilman and obviously Christopher Streppen in very similar liveries, so we're going to try to not get these guys confused tonight as we head through the chase down towards Murray's Corners. Drivers side by side, 2 by 2 formation, ready to take the start. And of course, a massive grid here tonight with 34 cars on the grid. Going to be very, very competitive, I feel. Lots of slipstreaming, lots of fighting as they pass the pit entrance, nearing Murray's Corner. Obviously, left car on the inside. Christopher Streppen is going to have the inside line into turn 1. Torzidlo on the outside, and Wolf Matuszka praying in the background that something might happen as we roll towards the gantry. Let every car come round the last turn, waiting for the green flag to drop, and it does so. Great start there from Christopher Streppen. Wolf Matuszka there getting the jump on Maximilian Vede and poking the nose up the inside of Torzidlo. But every driver safely through at the front of the grid, looking back. Green flag waving furiously on the left. Drivers running wide, taking all they can. But everybody, Kevin, I believe, comes out of turn 1 straight.
It does look like it, and especially after last week, that's very nice to see. Though we do already see them go 3 wide, 4 wide down the straight here, up towards the mountain, as we can see Torzidlo trying to get a nose in. We've just lost contact with them, but we can see up here with Jimenez being very close to the car in front. Every little mistake will be punished here now up the mountain. Everyone's so close, it could become a hell of a lot of trouble. But it all seems to go good for now. As we see Jimenez get the overtake there. Yes, he has completed it, going up towards the top of the mountain, as we do have a yellow flag in the rear.
Yeah, super great move there by Jimenez. You saw him get the outside line into the Audi cutting of turns 3 and 4 and just allowed that slingshot around the outside of Bart Matcher to give it. Oh, sorry, not Bart Matcher. Is that Jenkins? It could be Matcher, actually, looking at the livery. But great battles nonetheless. Everybody coming relatively cleanly over the mountain. I can only see one car on the radar lagging at the back, but as we look to the front, Marius Torzidlo riding on board for the first run down Conrod Straight, of course, through the dipper. Forest elbow of turn 19. Is he going to be close enough to Verstappen to get a slipstream? I believe 0.3 would be just inside the slipstream, but of course with the Ginetta gearing it is going to be very, very short indeed as we crest the hill down the Conrod straight towards turns 20, 21 and 22. That is the chase. Looking back, Dario Barzaghi, a driver who we're used to seeing nearer the front of the grid, of course finds himself down in P11 in the Bolus Esports car. But everybody looking relatively safe, I would say. Everybody's kind of nicely spread out and has found their own ground, and Ethan Scott, I believe, is the driver looking at the timing board who has managed to find his way to the back of the grid. Unfortunately, if I was him, I would be taking an early stop, getting a fresh pair of tyres on if he's flat spotted him, and seeing how much time he can make up. And speaking of early spots, Andy Boardman dives into the lane, the first, I believe, of our pit stoppers, along with Bart Matcher.
Yeah, those do seem like early stops, though this could be the perfect opportunity to get that bit of free air, that you're not being held up by anyone in front. You just to focus on your own drive and your own skill, and yeah, already having the pit stop out of the way. As we're now looking at Vettel still close to the rear of Wolf Patushka, going up the mountain just past the mountain straight. Going into the cutting, then Quarry Corner, where we just saw Jimenez do that great overtake on Bart Martia, which they're now going to enter. And yeah, still, I'm actually surprised on how clean this has all been, with only the one incident we had at the back.
Yeah, I think drivers probably listening very closely to what the stewards had to say from last week. Nobody likes working overtime, and especially the stewards if they can't help it. Of course, any races, any penalties submitted after the race were also reviewed, so the 2 hours of overtime was probably closer to 4, I would say. But everybody relatively clean. I'm glad to see everybody has kind of, listened to the stewards, although Christopher Strapen here coming under pressure from Torzidlo as we flick to a race replay here of the Strapen. What has happened here? Coming over the top of the mountain, he slapped the wall on the outside. Looks very, very close indeed. Buckets of understeer by the looks of it through McPhillamy Park, and he catches the grass and slaps the wall on the entry to Skyline. That's not going to be doing that Ginetta any good at all on that side. So eyes peeled on what Torzidlo can kind of capitalise on this if he can. And we look to the front now after coming out of the replay, and Verstappen still does lead Torzidlo, but Verstappen's car is going to be carrying some damage, Kevin. It's not going to be an easy 55 minutes for this guy.
No, with the damage then, especially, you want all the steering that you have down the mountain. And yeah, with a bit of damage, that does make it more difficult. I will say it was very good of him to not fully lose the car there, because it is very easy to lose it. Touching the grass there, the car is very easy to snap from under you, and you'll hit a wall. The car becomes uncontrollable. But he was able to keep it straight going down Skyline.
Yeah, not a place where you want to be slapping walls, especially at the top end of Skyline. It's very easy to beat it off the left side and then continue to beat off the right and the left as you go down the hill. It's, of course, not NASCAR like we saw at Martinsville last week, with the excellent move from Chastain around the outside of turns 4 to gain a position for the chase. But I did see a drive-through down the bottom end of the board there. Didn't quite catch who that was for, but Mark Elgard in the mid-pack mid-pack racing is always super close with these Ginettas. We seem to see kind of like the front kind of 8 or so streak away, gain their own little bit of ground, but then we see this kind of clump in the middle where we have this silver driver of Jetson ahead in the 1, 2, 3, kind of almost being, I wouldn't say a cork in the bottle, because I mean Barzaghi is more than capable, I'd say, of finding his way around it, but it of course does bring Elgard and Hagstrom Vigishu up to the back of the Bolus Esports Ginetta, and you're going to end up with this kind of pack racing train where nobody's really going to be gaining much, because obviously the gearing here isn't long enough for the Ginettas without a slipstream, let alone with a slipstream. So you're going to be constantly hitting this kind of area of traffic where you're just not going to be able to find a way through, and possibly this could be where you think about taking a mandatory stop.
Yeah, like I said before with the guys that stopped earlier, just get it out of the way early as possible, then have the free air so you can just race at your own pace. I will say the drive-through that we saw was for speeding in the pit lane, as we've just seen him clear it, so they'll be able to just continue their race now. But yeah, this is where, especially if you're like Elgod or Vigashu, you might want to be thinking of doing that pit stop this lap just to get that bit of free air. Though you will see, with some of the stragglers now being a bit behind, you might be going from one battle right into the next.
Yeah, it could be a super competitive build as Michael Sundstrom, fresh from the FIA Motorsport Games in France only a couple of weeks ago, looks to make a move on the back of Daniel Jim coming down into Murray's Corner, the final turn here as we look towards the nearly on pace driver. So excellent driver Sundstrom, missed round one unfortunately due to commitments with the FIA Motorsport Games, and did come back for a race in Zolder, but didn't unfortunately go his way, not enough to bag a few points, but everything is to play for as we ride on board the nearly on pace 899 Ginetta, looking towards the back of Daniel Jim ahead in the 71, heading up the mountain straight towards turn 2. Very long drag here, very easy to get alongside your opponent if you do get a very bad run out of turn 1, which is Hell Corner, but up towards the quarry, we're looking for the kind of extra tarmac on the left, the escape road for a break, and he closes right up to the back of Daniel Jim on the brakes. 71 going to have a mirror full of the nearly on pace car as we head up towards the Audi cutting. Not going to be close enough to make a move, although two very different lines. We saw Daniel Jim ahead taking a much more wider line to get the swoop in, whereas Michael Sundstrom almost takes the shallow line to shorten off the corner, and now over the mountain. We're going to be very surprised if we see a move over here. I think you, Kevin, as well as I know, passing on the mountain is nearly impossible unless a driver ahead of you makes a big mistake.
Yeah, just like you say, it's just a little bit too short of straights here, too narrow to be really thinking about doing an overtake. The only place I can think of is if you're able to get side by side here, but still that straight is just a bit too short. But here you can see when you're a bit faster than the car in front, yes, you just get so close to them, you have to be so careful on the brakes not to just give them that little tap in the rear and then really create something for everyone else and yourself. But as they now have gone through the dipper on towards the Conrod Straight, we're about to hear that beautiful sound of the rev limiter going ning again. But yeah, it seems like once they're in this position and you're not close enough, overtaking is going to be really difficult, as we could see Ben Hellman coming rather close, but then once you get into that maximum of your speed, there's nothing else you can do.
Yeah, certainly super hard, but we did see on board the Sundstrom being very, very confident on the brakes down the mountain, so it could be a place where he might gain some ground on Daniel Jim. We see Daniel Jim there has pulled out a kind of bigger gap towards the front of the field. They head through Murray's Corner. Hellman not close enough to make a move, although Murray's Corner, again, an excellent place if you can make a move stick, as we see Mark Elgard, Dario Barzaghi and Hagstrom Bigashew all getting into lock there. I think Barzaghi was off the road. We see Elgard squeezing Hagstrom Bigashew to the pit wall, and Jensen ahead. It does come under fire from Mark Elgard. A little bit of Dane on pole action here through turn 1. Mark Elgard gets the move done, and of course he now has all the free air ahead of him, although looking in his mirror, he has an angry swarm of Ginettas in the form of Jensen, Hagstrom, Bigashew, Barzaghi, Jordan Daly, I believe, caught up in there, and Jan Yo as well, a driver we've not seen all too much of, with the fearsome eyes and lips of that Ginetta. Barzaghi touching the grass a little bit on the entry to quarry by the looks of it, but we ride on board the Helicam side by side. Oliver Hagstrom Bigashew comes up the inside into the Audi cutting with, sorry, that was Jensen alongside, and they touch. Big spin into the Audi car, and hopefully every driver behind sees a yellow, but relatively unfazed. Drivers bumping doors, and they kind of pushed each other straight, but now this allows Dario Barzaghi to potentially claim back some positions, but smartly a dab of the brakes before he comes over the top of the mountain into Griffin's Mount, and of course backs out of the move between Oliver Hagstrom Bigashew and Jetson. But it does of course allow Jan Yo and Daly to get involved in this fight, and very, very surprised that that wasn't a much more serious accident, Kevin.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that they tried to stay side by side going through that corner, because there's so little room for error with that little kink going up into the cutting. But yeah, that they were able to just keep on going without too much damage and carnage behind. Like, they were just able to twitch their car back straight and kept on going, even though it didn't get the other guys behind closer in. Yeah, that was a good save by both drivers.
Yeah, certainly could have been a lot more nasty, and could have been a rolling roadblock for the next, like, 20 cars in the train that were going to follow them. But Oliver Hagstrom Bigashew here with the tow from Jetson's car ahead down into the chase. Of course, both drivers catching limiter down the straight. Nobody's going to have the overlap. Nobody's going to be brave enough on the brakes. Oliver Hagstrom Bigashew thinks twice, pulls back to the outside to try and maximise the corner and maximise his run down into Murray's Corner, turn 23 at the end of the circuit. You think Bathurst, I think 23 turns sounds quite a lot, but when you bear in mind that 2, 4, 6, 7 of them are all within quick succession of each other coming down the mountain, and Barzaghi here to the pit wall with Oliver Hagstrom-Vigashue makes the move stick on Jetson down into turn 1 hell corner. Barzaghi on the inside, Oliver Hagstrom-Vigashue to the outside, very nasty curve on the inside, and Barzaghi catches it. Unfortunately pushes himself a little bit wide into Oliver Hagstrom-Vigashue, who ends up taking the kind of rallycross line. And look at this, he's lost 2 positions nearly. He's got a run on Jetson and he's got Daly gone past as well. So Hagstrom-Vigashue is going to be very fired up in order to get these places back.
Yeah, so now see Daly also trying to... Ooh, he tried to overtake Barzaghi. No, was that Barzaghi?
I think that was Jetson, possibly.
That was Jetson, yeah. He tried to overtake Jetson. Oh, that was a bit too early on the gas again when he hit one. I think that was the parakeet car, or did I
Possibly
once again
Phil Roberts,
confuse
yeah,
it?
I would say.
Yeah, but yeah, he tried to go for the overtake. He was just a bit too late on the brakes there, I'd say, with Jetson trying to cut him off. But yeah, that's sort of what you'll probably see here with people not wanting to stick behind anyone else, trying to go for that move at one point. Maybe now with still a lot of the race to go, they think, okay, I'll give it one shot, and then if it goes wrong, I still have the rest of the race to catch back up. But yeah, don't really know what Daly tried to do, because with these cars, I'd say he wasn't too much alongside.
Yeah, had a very minor overlap, if that, I would say. So very, very easily done, you know, misjudging slightly where your front end of your car ends, especially if you're not used to driving a Ginetta as such. Jan Yo hot on the back of Oliver Hagstrom-Vigashue, looking to capitalise on what happened just nearly a lap ago. And of course, shout out to all our stewards who are going to be reviewing all of these incidents kind of live as they happen. We have Daniel, AJ, Andreas, Connor, Martin and Will Stevenson back in the box. So great to have you guys with us. Of course, going to be frantically scribbling notes down, and we already have had a few notes come through. So we have an incident on lap 1, turn 2, involving the 8 and the 1, 2, 3. We have a warning for car 8, hit the 1, 2, 3 in the rear under braking. Lap 1, turn 3, involving the 34 and the 60. We have a 5-second for car 34. 34 clips the inside, loses control, and the 34 kind of glitched through the 60, unfortunately. And finally, incident lap 1, turn 3, involving the 1 and the 6. No further action, minor contact. So, fingers crossed this week, stewards are going to have a nice early bedtime. We're going to be able to settle in nice and early and not spend all evening reviewing races. Of course, everybody here at RCI does do this free of charge and puts on a great show. Kudos to all the stewards that do give up their free time. And of course, everybody here tonight gives up their free time to put on a great race and a great spectacle, as Jan Yo in the very terrifying Ginetta looking at the front of that thing. It creeps me out every time, Kevin. Literally, if this thing was chasing me up the mountain, I think I'd just pull over and give up the place.
I think I'd just turn off the mirror or turn it around just to not have to look at it. But yeah, it is something terrifying to see behind. I, thank God, have not had the pleasure of that just yet. Also because I wasn't in this split. But yeah, I can imagine, as Vigashue just taps the wall on exit there. But yeah, I can imagine some of the drivers here are not too happy when they see the front of Jan Yo's car in the rear.
Yeah, definitely something I don't want to be seeing right now, as our TV director Ryan Mawson decides to pick the angle that all we can see is Jan Yo's front of that car, but Oliver Hagstrom-Vigashue has found a little bit of a gap, and Victor Nordquist flicking back to another Swede coming under the back of the pigeon livery car of Ted Edwards. Of course, I believe you guys might have touched in qualifying on the one-off livery again that Ted Edwards has tonight in support of Movember. Of course, in the UK it is November, and Movember is an annual event involving the growing of mustaches during the month of November to raise awareness of men's health issues such as prostate cancer, testicular cancer, and of course men's suicide, something that's not touched on too much. You know, viewers will notice on the side of Ted Edwards' car, it does have a little pigeon with a mustache. He has ditched the Halloween witch's broom and hat. Of course, has donned a mustache on the pigeon. Shout out to Katrina Scott, as always, for a fantastic themed livery. And it's great to see custom liveries in ACC. I'm really really enjoying some of the designs that these guys are pulling out, especially for these one-off events. You know, not every person is going to have a livery for the Ginetta, and it's great to see those making an effort to do so. But Maximilian Vede now comes under attack on Wolf Matuszka. Wolf to the outside, which of course gives him the inside into the cutting, but he does give up the position by the looks of it, unless Wolf just had a really bad run out of turn 2. But very unlike Wolf, I can't see this battle is going to be over yet. Wolf is going to be chomping at the bit in order to try and catch the back on Vede's car.
Yeah, as we now see Benjamin Harmon come under threat from Jimenez. I think Matuszka might have just had to slightly miss his braking point for Vedi to get through that easily. As we can see Vigashu go through the quarry, trying to do the same move that we saw Jimenez do earlier, but he just can't seem to be doing that against John Daly. But yeah, actually, there's some good fights coming up the mountain once again after we've had a few incidents here. But yeah, I can only think that Matuszka should have missed his braking point in order for it to be that easy for Vedi.
Yeah, it certainly looked like a very easy move Vedi pulled out. Vedi just kind of hit the apex, hit the accelerator, and just outdragged Wolf up into the quarry and cutting. So yeah, very strange indeed. Of course, Wolf Matuszka is only human like us all, so it's still susceptible to mistakes. But we have a very busy week this week at RCI. My weekly calendar segment is ever growing longer. Of course, Monday we have the Ginetta Cup, and Tuesdays we find ourselves still with an empty slot, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. Wednesday sees our weeknight team championship. Find yourself a car, a friend, and sign up for 80 minutes of close racing in the GT3, with the final round Watkins Glen coming up this week. Team URL still lead pro with Team Forza Italia.pl hot on their heels, divided by just 9 points. And Race Ventura are running away with the Silver Championship from Garazzi Ragazzi Racing. Very different to how we saw them last week, but Andy Boardman coming down into the chase, looking to the back of Bayron. Bayron gives up the inside line very nicely indeed. Boardman jumps over the curb, and a very smart move indeed. But Bart Matcher, of course, has taken his pit stop hot on the heels of Andy Boardman, who also took it at the same time. So these two are technically the first on the road that pitted early. And now if they could work together, they could really make up some ground between them, helping each other with the slipstreams, etc. But going back to our calendar, Thursday's multi-class has wrapped up last week, giving us another empty slot this week. Christopher Strapen took the Camaro to a GT4 silver win. Rudy Philmalt, ironically, taking the Ginetta to the top step in the AM Championship, and Andy Boardman taking Porsche Cup honours. Friday rolls into round 7 this week at Brands Hatch for our GT Sprint Challenge. Top 3 pro cars separated by less than 7 points in that championship. That's definitely going to be one to watch here at RCI TV, with Samir Foch topping standings from Jaroslav Honzik and Valentin Barrier still all to play for in that championship. And Saturday this week sees our Endurance World Challenge roll into Watkins Glen for 12 hours of GT3 action. You can of course catch all the action from the RCI Blue Lamborghini over on my Twitch channel. Cheeky little self-plug. Oreos with a H on the end, so Oreos, however you want to pronounce it. Oreos was taken, unfortunately, so we had to settle for something. And this week we have sign-ups galore. Sign-ups for the Bathurst 12-hour event happening on November 26th. GT3 cars at the famous mountain where we are today. Need we say more? Grab yourself some friends, pick a car, and prepare yourself for 12 hours of awesome racing. Sign-ups this week, of course, are also open for the Saturday night, our winter break, with a shorter calendar than usual, and voting is open on the Discord server for what 3 rounds we will be racing at. Head on over to cast your vote and get signed up. And tonight, another championship sign-up has literally opened to fill the slot on Thursday. Thursday Championship Season 11, where we're pairing up the BMW M2 alongside the GT4 class for another multi-class series. And you can, of course, sign up and pre-qualify for any of these events at any time by simply heading over to the website racerci.com. But back to tonight's action. Bart Matcher still looking at the diffuser of Andy Boardman ahead in the 69 Greased Weasel Racing. These guys possibly looking, I would say, Kevin, to work together to see how far they can, of course, get their cars up the field. Of course, anybody on the lane right now, Victor Nordquist being one of them, currently taking their stop, that'll be a free position to gain. So anything they can do to minimise time loss between each other is probably going to be a smart move. Leave till about 10 minutes when, you know, everybody's pitted, everybody's settled out, and then start fighting. Of course, if either two make a mistake, it's going to be, again, a free load of championship points for yourself.
Well, it actually, to me, it doesn't seem like they're working too much together. How close they were together going up the mountain. I'd say if you're working together, you're trying not to be that close, just in case there is that little mistake where it can hurt you both. I'd say especially if Martia wants to just use the slipstream, use maybe a little bit more fuel so he can hit the loud pedal louder. After Wolf, but Tushka hits the wall. Was that a hit or did he just lose it?
We're not too sure. Slightly missed that one as we cast back to a race replay. Riding on board here, coming out of the downhill section of the mountain, clipped the wall on the inside, but it fired him to the right and then snapped back to the left before the elbow at the end of the mountain. So Wolf is going to be nursing some heavy front end damage on that Ginetta. Now we're going to have to keep an eye on his lap times, Kevin, to see how much time he is losing and whether or not Wolf might find this a time now to pit, get the damage fixed, take a new set of tyres and go at it again.
I think he might just choose not to take the tyres, especially as he's already got the damage. So I will think he will do the repairs as we can see Sunstream going on Swartzidlo as the number 373 goes into the pits. He wants nothing of that fight. Though I do want to correct you on one little thing. The voting for the winter break of Saturday Night L has already closed and the tracks have been decided. Race 1, which is on the 19th, I believe, yes, will be, have a guess, here at the mountain as we see some carnage happening here with Victor Nordqvist. I really want to know what happened there because it seems like maybe someone missed their braking and hits another one into the wall.
Yeah, so some very odd incidences happening here as we head to a race replay. Broikers ahead, Victor Nordqvist, of course, behind, and Bart Matcher randomly kind of on driver's left, created a little bit of a narrow corridor and a bit of a pincer movement. Nordqvist had kind of sized himself up to find alongside on Broikers going down into the elbow, and then all of a sudden Bart Matcher sat there. Very peculiar.
Yeah, I really want to know what happened there. But yeah, we can see now some heavy damage on the car from Broker, with Nordqvist chasing him down into the final corner as they round it out. I'm actually surprised that Broker is not going into the pits to try and repair that, though he has already pit, so that might be why. But yeah, this is now turning into some battle with everyone being bunched up again, some nursing damage, different types of lap times they're going to get. Going to be interesting as we see Bart Mattia go into the pits to get those repairs done.
Yeah, nursing a lot of front end damage on that car. So I'm wondering if possibly Bart came down the mountain through the S's, ended up clipping the wall, kind of, maybe stalled the car out or had to get going again. And of course, a couple of cars coming down at full racing speed, racing in a little pack unsighted. Possibly not the greatest of moves for Bart, but again, with the mountain being so narrow, you just cannot find any kind of safety road to either park yourself on or kind of stay off the racing line, especially with people fighting as close as they are. Victor Nordqvist on the back of Broikers coming over the top of Griffin's Mount down into Reed Park. It's going to be absolutely close fight over the mountain. Broikers is going to be seeing nothing but Jurassic Park Ginetta in the back mirror, and of course with those little fangs in the grille, it's probably going to be nearly as terrifying as Jan Yo's kind of eyed and lipped livery that we keep seeing on every single car he seems to run, lastly knowing it on the Porsche and seeing it of course on the Ginetta. Tom Shipston, meanwhile, in the middle of all of this, has managed to get his way past another of the Sim Brothers Sim Sports cars, but unfortunately not poor position by the way, because the next car behind Shipston is Redford as Victor Nordqvist clatters the wall on the exit of the elbow. These guys are going to be pushing extremely hard. Of course, with the shorter gear ratio, not going to be too easy. Jimenez looks to the inside. A Bayron into the last corner. Bayron running a little bit wide along. Jimenez up the inside to take another position away. P16, of course. Jimenez has pitted. Bayron is still yet to pit. So again, Jimenez maybe not needing to be as aggressive as he was, but Victor Nordqvist still finds himself looking at the back of Broiker's car nearly a lap later.
Yeah, and they keep being this close. I think if you look at the car, Broker should be nursing more damage, but being in front, he is able to just close the door. As we see, Nordqvist might have a better exit on the final corner here. going into the first one, which is Hell Corner. Before we go on to the mountain straight, let's see if he can take the position, taking the inside line. He does not have enough power on exit to take that position away from Broker. This is some fight here.
Yeah, it's great to see drivers being very respectful indeed. Now, this allows Tom Shipston to drag the Ground Zero racing car up alongside Victor Norquist down the mountain straight into Quarry Corner. And look at the great run. He's had the toe of Broikers ahead, so he's almost had like a double toe from Nordquist initially out the corner, but Nordquist leaving it very late on the brakes and does come out ahead indeed. And I've just realised that the Sim Brothers racing cars do have their names written under the rear spoiler, and that is in fact Alan Manson behind, who is down in P28. So of course, no real reason to overtake Tom Shipston. He's going to be seeing blue flags constantly, but Victor Norquist now wants to get a move on, and he does make the move stick up through the BP Ultimate section across the top of Griffin's Mount and down the other side. This is now going to allow Victor Norquist hopefully to drive away. And it looks like Broikers, like you say, Kevin, is nursing some big damage on that car. It now allows Tom Shipston all over the back of him, but Bayron and Jan Yo now coming to terms over the Colonel Straight, up and over the hill under the Pirelli boardings towards the chase, but Byron doesn't quite look like he's just about been cleared, so Jan Yo does snap off the nose into the chase. And of course, a nice easy move, probably a great run out of Forest Elbow and the Dipper, and that does allow him to drag alongside Christian Lindgren, obviously now on Nat Shirley as well, down into the chase, but no move to be had. This is the only problem with pack racing. You just have to find that kind of extra 0.1, 0.2 here and there over your opponent to really get a move to stick, or you just kind of end up in this stalemate where you end up back and forth down the straight, and Tom Shipston makes the move stick on Broikers in the heavily wounded Ginetta. So maybe we might see Broikers come into the pits to maybe repair that damage. Still 32 minutes to go. Still quite a long way for this grueling mountain.
Yeah, especially with that amount of damage, you really don't want to be nursing that. As we see, Martijn Broker do go into the pits now to repair that damage. We saw it for the last 2 laps. He's struggling as we see Barzaghi just dip his tyres into the grass there. As we're having now a look at Lindgren go down towards, going up the mountain. I got a little bit confused by the camera angle. Sorry about that. Trying to go past Nat Shirley as he stays very close, going towards the cutter. They seem to be still having a very close fight here, being able to keep it clean for now. But yeah, we thought it was going to stay very clean throughout the race, but we've already seen some hefty accidents happen. So let's see how this develops.
Yeah, certainly we've seen some hefty licks across various walls up and down the mountain. So great to see these guys still keeping their kind of fight in the race, not giving up as easily as we maybe thought some drivers might have. Once you tend to have an accident at the mountain, it does tend to, finish a race pretty soon. But Christian Lindgren getting very accommodated with the back of Nat Shirley's car. This is, of course, for silver honours. Anyone who is new to the broadcast, looking down the left side of your screen, you'll see white number boards and grey number boards. The white number boards, of course, are the top 20 cars that have qualified for this championship, and anybody with a grey number board, or what we call a silver class car, with any of those that just about missed out on the top 20, so 21 to about 40th, I think the split ends. And of course, every driver does have the right to fight another one. No need to yield to pros and silvers. If you want to fight a pro if you're a silver, then so be it. There's no obligation to give way. Of course, you do have to think of your bigger championship picture. As we see Christian Lindgren trying to size up the outside of Nat Shirley into the chase, but unfortunately nothing to be had. And you see how much curb Christian Lindgren takes compared to Nat Shirley in the chase. Nat Shirley took none at all. Got an absolutely blistering exit down to Murray's, whereas Christian Lindgren kind of just kissed the inside. It was enough just to upset the Ginetta and, of course, trigger any traction control stuff that stops you accelerating and propelling your car forward, of course. But Christian Lindgren still not giving up on this fight. Very close indeed down into Hell Corner. It's a very misleading kind of camera angle. It looks a lot closer than they are, and then you kind of come out around the corner and you realise actually there is a little bit of a gap between them. But Dario Barzaghi, looking down into the back of the shot, is slightly out of sync, Kevin. I was expecting to see him a little bit further up the field.
Well, he did start, I think it was in P11, so he has been dropping down. He has been having some trouble. So now looking at Michael Sundstrom trying to eye up Daniel Jim, going down the chase, though. Now that we see this camera angle, there is still a lot of space between them. Though we have also been having some more penalties come through. we had a lap 5, turn 5 incident involving the 123 and the 188. 5 seconds for the the 811. Clips the inside wall and makes contact with the 123. We had lap 6, turn 1 between the 899 and the 71, racing incident, minor contact. Also lap 6, turn 1 between the 796 and the 899, no further action. 796 and breaks himself, contact with the 899, unavoidable. And once again, lap 6, turn 1 between the 8 and the 811. 5 seconds for car 8, which is Daniel Barzaghi. 8 forces the 811 off track, causing multiple loss of positions. There was one coming in from a bit earlier, lap 4, turn 12 between the 77 and the 127, racing incident. 127 loses it at Skyline, 77 can't stop fast enough to avoid contact. Lap 6, turn 1, once again between the 123 and the 197, no further action, minor contact. And then lap 6, turn 2 to move a little bit up the road between the 123 and the 197 again. Drive through for car 197, taking out the 123 from behind, not enough overlap. And then also in lap 6, turn 2, the 123 and the 255 drive through for 123. The 123 was stopped sideways on tracks and takes out the 225 when trying to rejoin.
That was the Jetson and Phil Roberts incident, the last point we touched on there. But this man here, Christoph Verstappen, coming up the mountain, has made a pit stop. And looking at his pit stop timer, 50 seconds, just over 50 seconds, compared to a few other drivers up and down the field who are in the kind of early 40 region. So I'm guessing that Verstappen has, of course, fixed the damage from the hard lick he had up the top of the mountain earlier, just out of Skyline. Oliver Hagstrom, big issue here, still on the comeback drive, had 5 seconds, I believe, from one of the stewards, has of course cleared that in his mandatory stop. So anybody with a +5 next to their name without a green board, who has that little orange with a number 1, is still yet to make a stop. So in the case of Jetson, right at the bottom of the board, of course, if he took his 5 seconds or the drive through, he would of course be able to take that alongside sometimes the pit stop, such as Barzaghi. If he still had a stop, he would be able to clear that 5 seconds off, just add it on to the total time. Although with Barzaghi taking his stop, the 5 seconds will be added to his total race time. So whoever is behind him in this case at the moment, Victor Nordqvist, is going to have to pull out at least 5 seconds to the good, or face losing another position just by purely, almost, I wouldn't say no fault of his own, because he has picked up a penalty for a reason, but of course he hasn't had a time to defend that. It's just purely been handed over as coming down the mountain. Hagstrom, big issue in the wake of Bayron ahead. Is going to see if he can make use of the slipstream, tucked right in behind, lights ablaze into the back of Bayron's car. Daniel Jim behind, of course, still looking to climb back up to where he was, but Oliver Hagstrom, big issue, has gained a little bit going into the chase. Of course, although the limiters are very short, you do reach the limiter a lot quicker, and Bayron, I think, has kind of almost given Oliver Hagstrom, big issue, that space. Knows that Bayron still has to pit, maybe thinking, I'm just going to let him go, I'm not going to waste time here. Any boys that are coming up behind me that quick deserve to go past. And Daniel Jim again on the outside of Murray's corner. Bayron still giving way to that car as well. Again, another car that has lodged its pit stop. So very smart racing from Bayron. Although he's dropped 2 positions, he hasn't lost all that time and risked the car going into the wall by overly defending. Of course, Bayron in a silver class car, whereas Oliver Hagstrom, big issue, and Daniel Jim are in the pro split. Ted Edwards coming out of the pits in the Movember themed Pigeon car, finds himself in P17 and accelerating up towards the top of the mountain. Of course, anybody that is doing Movember, I would love to see your efforts inside the RCI Discord. You do post them in the general chat. I'll be sure to have a look and see how your mustache comes along. And me and Kevin were talking about facial hair before broadcast, and we both determined that if we did November, we wouldn't have much of a mustache by the end of it, would we, Kevin?
No, definitely not. It would like a teenager's first mustache, all wispy and all that. So I'll stay clear of doing that. But yeah, it's still a very good thing to do to look into the prostate cancer and male suicide, which is still very prevalent in society. So it's all for a good cause. So I want to come back to Byron as well, because seeing how he's being caught by all these other drivers who've had their pit stop, as we see Jimenez also do a very nice overtake, or was that for a lap car?
I believe that was Matthew Kingston Lee, possibly, in the big yellow taxi, as I like to call
Aye.
his livery. He's always yellow body with yellow wheels, very reminiscent of a New York cab. But yeah, Jimenez absolutely sending it up the inside of the elbow. Great pass there, very late lunge, but still managed to draw the car up in time and didn't clatter into the back of Kingston Lee. Again, these two guys, of course, fighting for different classes. Jimenez in the pro and Kingston Lee in the silver. Big slide from Kingston Lee in the background there, but this does allow Jimenez to drive up the road and onto the back of Andy Boardman, who was one of the first pitters of the race.
Yeah, it might just be that he gave way, but otherwise that was a very good send by Jimenez into the dipper. As we're now looking at Benjamin Harmon trying to go to the back of Michael Sundstrom, only 1.2 seconds behind after all this time. Both still having to do a pit stop, so this is going to be still a very interesting race as they go towards the top of the mountain onto the last turn before they hit Skyline. See if they stay on track, keeping it on the black stuff, going over Skyline into the SS now. Most tight and twisty point of this track. This could still go anywhere, especially with some of these guys, how well they've practiced their pit stops being very quick. Some very quick compared to others, as we've seen in the Friday GT Championship, where someone was, I think, like 6 seconds faster than anyone else in the pits. This battle could be won in the pit stops.
Yeah, some absolutely crazy guys in the pit stop kind of region, like you say, Kevin. Wolf Matuszka being one of the ones that always, one of my first broadcasts, I remember watching Wolf. I think Audi R8, possibly Deutschland Masters, somewhere in that championship maybe. So like the second series I casted, I watched Wolf in practice. All he was doing was going out of the pit lane, coming around to pit entry, coming into pit entry, and every time he did it, he was a little bit faster and a little bit more committed. And in the end, like you say, it does save a chunk of time on pit stops. And when you're this close kind of towards the front end of the field, Wolf Matuszka 1.7 away from Vede. If Vede has a stop that's 3 or 4 seconds slower, Wolf is going to gain a position regardless. So it does really, really pay to practice your stops. And of course, with a mixed kind of strategy like you can run in this Ginetta Cup, all you do, of course, have to put in is 1 litre of fuel. But any guys going this late in the race will probably do just that, as Daniel Jim makes a pass on Matt Stevens. Again, not for any kind of championship honour. Stevens in the silver class, Daniel Jim in the pro class. But again, very smart racing from these two guys. You don't want to be wasting time fighting cars that aren't in your class when you could be making progress. And speaking of fighting cars in your class, Ted Edwards and Christian Lindgren now find themselves locked in a battle. Of course, Ted Edwards just out of the pits, and Christian Lindgren still hassling the back. Darts left, darts right down into Murray's corner, trying to make the Jurassic kind of Simsport car as big in the mirrors as he can, trying to throw the pigeon of the side of the on the side of the car completely off guard, and looks again towards the inside of turn 1 hell corner, and still can't just pull alongside enough. But again, this battle is far from over, Kevin. I think these guys are going to be duking it out to the end.
Yeah, especially if you see how close Lindgren is to the back of the car of Ted Edwards. We just hope that they can keep it clean, as we see Janyo being very scary into, did you call it the big yellow taxi of Kingston Lee? Though I think we can see a move, as we just saw before with Jimenez, where Kingston Lee will not find him too much, seeing as they're a different class and he still needs to pit. As we now see Barsagi go to the back of Nat Shirley, going through the cutter, the mountain. He still has his 5-second penalty, so even if he gets past, he still has to motor it.
Yeah, that's it. He can pull out 5 seconds to the good on Nat Shirley if he can find a way past. But of course, these two, again, not fighting for championship honours, just overall honours, as Barzagi currently resides in P20 in the Barlas Sports car. A great driver, seen time and time again at RCI races. And they raced in Night Owl last time out, raced in kind of every Monday series I've casted, probably for the past 3 or 4 series now. So great to see these guys coming back time and time again. And of course, if you do like what you're seeing and you do want to get involved at all here with us at RCI, and even maybe make a broadcast or 2 along your way, head on over to the website racerci.com. But Nat Shirley with a much better exit down the mountain straight, out into the Conrad Straight as Daniel finds himself past the big yellow taxi of Kingston Lee. Again, two drivers not really fighting for kind of, overall honours, just fighting for, not fighting for class, just fighting for overall honours, as Andy Boardman finds himself under pressure from David Grunstrom. Again, two drivers that we shouldn't be seeing together, really. I mean, we've got a pro car and a silver car. These guys should be in, kind of different leagues, but it is great to see the silver guys sticking it to, the top 20 qualifiers. Although you were fast in your pre-qualification, who's to say that David Grunstrom isn't a secret master of the mountain and can really give you a run for your money, as Christian Lindgren is still trying to give Ted Edwards Pigeon a run for his money. Ted Edwards defensive on the inside, Christian Lindgren to the outside. Is he going to be forced over the curb? He's not. Very sensible driving from both drivers there, and we see a wiper on. I believe Matt Stevens ahead, coasting off to the left-hand side. This could cause a little bit of chaos. Looks like maybe a hardware failure for the RPMS SimSport driver, but back on the rear bumper, you can see a great view of the little mustache on the Pigeon up the side. You say Christian Lindgren to the inside. Ted Edwards trying to hang it around the outside. The corner is very, very cambered on the inside. It's not an ideal place to be on the outside. Does give you normally a poor run, but Ted Edwards has somehow managed to put up a defensive fight on Christian Lindgren going up into the gun. Ted runs a little bit wide. Christian gets the old switcheroo, coming back over the top of the mountain. They are side by side, and Christian Lindgren finally makes a move stick coming out of the cut. And what fantastic fighting from both drivers there. Both very respectful and giving each other a load of racing room, but not enough to kind of disadvantage one another. They haven't lost a lot of time to Dario Barzaghi behind.
Well, it does look like Barzaghi has been able to get into a little bit as he loses the car into the grass there. Still managed to keep control down Skyline through the S's. Once again, great car control by some of these guys, having dipped their tyres into the grass there just before Skyline and then not completely losing it. But yeah, going back to that fight we just saw between Ted Edwards and Lindgren, that was a great battle. One you don't usually expect in that first section going up the mountain, where there's usually not a lot of space. But yeah, like we said, they kept it clean, they kept it fair, and yeah, I'd love to see more of that.
Yeah, certainly great scenes here at RCI TV. David Grunstrom currently residing in P9 overall. Second step of the silver podium as it currently stands. However, him, Dominic Fouquete and Matthew Kingston Lee still all yet to do the stop, and Byron as well. So Christian Lindgren really wanted to get a move on to see how much he can chunk out of these guys once they take their pit stop. And of course, now he is in clean air ahead of Ted Edwards, and still 2 seconds to the good, I believe, of Byron ahead. He's going to have to clear another car, but pit window is still open for just under another 15 minutes. And of course, these drivers do have to take a mandatory stop. So let's hope everybody remembers, as I have seen a few times before in the past, people forgetting to take their stop. Kevin has just stepped away to grab a drink. I shall keep filling in for him. David Grunstrom coming up and over the mountain as we flick back to the battle with Ted Edwards and Christian Lindgren here, coming again up the mountain into turn 2. Ted Edwards still doesn't look like he's really lost the back of Christian Lindgren, although Lindgren made light work of getting past him. Ted has really got his head down, really focused onto the back of the RPMS SimSport, not the RPMS SimSport car, the Sim Brothers racing car. Too many team names to keep track of here, and everybody in very similar liveries sometimes. But yeah, Christian Lindgren still hasn't pulled out a massive gap to Ted Edwards, and Barzaghi is now finding himself just inside the frame. Every time we go around a corner, we see Barzaghi just in the background following the train, and ahead we see Byron heading down Skyline into the S's at the bottom of the hill. Again, Christian Lindgren is going to have to dispatch of Byron. Again, these two guys fighting for class, so we've got essentially what is P4 beginning to fight now in silver. We've got Byron ahead in the yellow and red car, and Christian Lindgren behind in the Jurassic kind of park themed car, and then we have Ted Edwards, of course, in the November themed Pigeon car behind. So this is going to be a battle that is going to be worth keeping an eye on, and I believe Kevin has just walked back in to the booth. Kevin, what did we get to drink?
Better not say. But yeah, I'm thinking with Byron, it's going to be very difficult for him. They still need to do their pits. They might have been asking a bit too much of their tyres up until now, where the other drivers already have had an opportunity to, maybe cool down the tyres a bit in case they've overworked it. As we've already seen him just drop back through the pack. as we now see Axel Figeshu get to the back of Kingston Lee, who, well, went a bit wide. Very easy overtake for Figeshu. Let's see if Jim is also able to capitulate on that. So it looks like he might be stuck behind for just a little bit, but nope, he can get past as well. But yeah, going back to Byron, I think they're just going to be struggling right now. They still need to do the pit stop, which they actually are doing right now. So we'll see where they come back on track. Maybe they'll be fighting Nordqvist. But yeah, we'll have to just wait and see while we see Figeshu go up the mountain.
So still some fights to settle up and down the field. Dominic Fekete, yet to pit, of course, up in P6 in a silver class. He's had a great drive this time. So it really worked his way up through the silver field. But Oliver Hagstrom and Figeshu here coming under pressure from Daniel Jim behind. Matthew Kingston Lee easily dispatched for these two guys. Probably Matthew Kingston Lee again. Oliver Hagstrom and Figeshu runs very wide out the top of the mountain at McPhillamy Park, coming into Skyline. Down the S's, very easy to kind of get yourself out of sync with these corners, sneakily back and forth. If you kind of mess one of them up, it kind of disrupts the rhythm quite a bit, and you end up kind of throwing yourself almost offline and losing a lot of time. But Daniel ahead is very clear of these guys. So if Oliver Hagstrom, Figeshu and Daniel Jim begin fighting for pro honours, you're going to see Jan Yo kind of tow himself away, and now Dario Barzaghi finds himself nearly to the back of Ted Edwards. Ginetta again very close to the wall, coming out of the dipper into Forest Elbow. Very easy to misjudge that corner, as we see Ted Edwards there trying to break the draft, coming down Commonwealth Straight, but Barzaghi very wise to it in the Team Barlas Esports car heading up towards the chase. Say Barzaghi doesn't look anywhere near close enough yet. Give it another lap or so. I reckon he's going to be hot on the heels of that pigeon car.
And it also will depend on how much Edwards will defend against Dario Barzaghi. No, he's got the 5 seconds and it's in a different class. If he thinks that Barzaghi has a bit more speed, he might be able to use that against Lindgren and maybe let Barzaghi pass, charge towards Lindgren, and then maybe capitalize on Barzaghi overtaking Lindgren. But yeah, that's all some tactical decisions that Ted needs to make very quickly. Otherwise, yeah, he might be fighting a pro driver when he wants to be getting up the road and fights with Lindgren.
Yeah, certainly so. Maybe if Katrina Scott is still in chat, maybe she can run next door and let Ted know Kevin Boss's great team tactic of letting Barzaghi go past, sticking with the back of Barzaghi and allowing Barzaghi to essentially be like the can opener into the door of Christian Lindgren, and then maybe follow through with the pigeon, and Mustache goes past in the blink of an eye. But these guys heading up the mountain. Ted is probably going to be very smart and dizzy. Runs a little bit wide onto the marbles, and that is the effect you have running too wide into the cut. And commentators curse. Maybe we were just praising Ted Edwards, and of course, whenever we seem to praise drivers here at RCI, it does seem to kind of end in their demise. Ryan Mawson has a kind of tactic of every car he cams to almost. Phil Roberts, I think, is the driver in question. Every time he seems to cam to Phil seems to have a little misdemeanor, and Edwards, unfortunately, getting out onto the marbles, heading up the hill into the cutting, just drags the car wide. I've done it so many times in GT3s, and obviously in a GT3 you're kind of, you know, traveling twice as fast, if you like, than a Ginetta, and yeah, it's just absolutely impossible to kind of save it. Once you've hit the marbles, hit the brakes, just kind of on ice, and you end up skating out into the wall. But Daniel Jim has managed to kind of maintain the gap between Oliver Hagstrom and Figeshu, I would say, ahead. Maybe Oliver even pulling out a little bit of a gap, trying to get himself onto the back of Jan Yo ahead to still claim for pro honours. And we still have quite a few cars up at the top of the field yet to pit, Kevin, and Christoph Verstappen holds the fastest lap, so possibly Christoph on a real big charge in order to try and get as close as he can to the guys ahead, to jump them all in the pit lane. And we know once Christoph Verstappen gets fired up, he is super quick, and I think this guy is one to watch towards the end.
Yeah, definitely. Now that he's got the fastest lap, well, he took a little bit more time in his pit stop, repaired the car, might have been able to make sure he was able to do faster laps. Doing some quick maths, he's about 30 seconds behind P1 currently, and most of the pit stops are around the 40-second mark. So looking at that, I think after this round of pit stops we will see Christoph Verstappen in front if he doesn't make any mistakes.
Yeah, looking towards the track map on the right-hand side of your screen. The red dot is, of course, the car we are currently spectating. And look at all that clear air ahead. You have the gaggle of cars ahead there, of course, P's 1 to 4 going into the chase at the bottom of the hill right now. Verstappen just beginning the run out of the Forest Elbow onto the Commonwealth Straight. This man here, Benjamin Heilmann, the next man in the queue. Not to be confused, very similar cars as Benjamin Heilmann. Not sure what happened there, but Mikael Sundström is the next car ahead. And of course, coming out into Murray's Corner, I believe Heilmann just behind there, if I'm not mistaken, back on the track.
He seems to have reappeared, yes.
A little Harry Potter moment, shall we call it, from Benjamin Heilmann. Possibly a Ford Anglia underneath the Ginetta. But back with us, it's great to see no connection issues there. A slight freak out maybe from the ACC server side. But Mikael Sundström up into P3. Again, a driver with a slightly less than ideal start for his first round at Zolder. Of course, he missed the first round we held at Kyalami due to the FIA Motorsport Games, where of course Mikael was representing Team Sweden. And great to see, of course, drivers from all walks of life ending up with their chance at a shot in esports. And an announcement went out today on the RCI Discord that we are looking to do possibly maybe more esports themed events and see where we can get ourselves in the world of that. And Mikael Sundström dispatches of, I believe, Redford very quickly over the top of the hill, wasting no time in traffic, wanting to chase the back of who's ahead, Wolf Matuszka, sorry, in the pink performance. Ginetta, of course, walking wounded from slapping the wall earlier on in the race. So it's all to play for at the front as Heilmann there catches Redford at the worst possible moment. Redford, very smart driving, takes to the escape road, hazards on, gets way out of the way of Heilmann, not wanting to get involved at all. And I don't blame him. I think if I saw Stewie in my mirrors, I would dive out of the way pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, if I see that speed difference, I'm getting right out the way. And then it was lucky that Heilmann cut to the back right at the top of Skyline, where basically you have the only bit of runoff on the mountain where it is safe to go to the left, get out of the way of someone else, or if you hit the wall, keep on hugging the wall and you'll be safe on the left-hand side. As we see Dario Bazzaghi now getting closer to the rear of Lindgren. Ted Edwards seemed to have dropped quite a little bit. I think he didn't just go wide, he might have done a little bit of a NASCAR move, as what happened last week. Just hugging the wall, trying to gain positions, though for him, he lost positions. But yeah, this is looking like Barzaghi is on the charge.
Yeah, so video game moves working out in NASCAR racing, but maybe not so much here in ACC GT platform racing. But absolutely stellar move. To anyone that actually saw that NASCAR race, all I saw was the end, and what an end. Like, it's crazy to think that years and years and years, loads of people have been doing that in racing games, and finally somebody attempts it in real life and gains an absolutely bucket load of positions and manages to make it into the chase for the end of the season. Absolutely crazy driving, and who'd have thought it? But I mean, maybe a faster way through the elbow and the cutting is maybe to ride that wall. Maybe Ted Edwards should have grazed the pigeon all the way around the outside of the Audi boards, kept his foot in it, and he might have gained a position or two.
Maybe, but then he would have also had the damage there, as we now see Blazaki getting quite close up to the back end of Lindgren in towards the chase. It's once again still not close enough as he clatters that curb going towards the final corner. Seeing how he's gaining, yeah, give him one or two more corners and he'll probably pass Lindgren. I think he'll be eyeing him up now through towards Hell Corner, trying to get a proper exit and have a better acceleration going towards the mountain straight. Finally dispatched of this little rivalry they've had for the past couple of laps.
Yeah, like we said earlier in the broadcast, it's great to see the silver, in quotation mark, drivers catching and obviously playing with the pro drivers and really holding them against their own. Of course, they are of no obligation to move out of the way. Even though they are a lower class driver, it is all still to play for. And speaking of all to play for, Kevin, towards the top of the board, Christoph Verstappen has jumped Sundström in the pit lane. So one car has been dispatched, 3 more still to go. And if your calculations are right, we might be seeing a Belgian man towards the top of the board very, very soon. Of course, with just over 2.5 minutes of pit time remaining. I think if you're not coming in this lap, then you've run out of time, unfortunately. Looking on the track map to where the leaders are, Verstappen just coming over the line now, and I believe everybody's going to have to be in pretty much this lap coming as Barzaghi licks the wall again. So the board, the Pertec boards have really taken an absolute clattering today, as confirmed in the chat. Tom Bryant with Daniel Crimson talking about RPMS Matt Stevens, we saw off to the driver's left on the mountain straight, wiper ablaze and driving in a straight line, did unfortunately have wheel issues as Wolf Matuszka here in the pit lane. You just saw a black and yellow car streak on past. Is that Benjamin Heilmann or is that Christoph Verstappen? It is indeed Christoph Verstappen in the number 7 has jumped Wolf Matuszka in the pits. So another position made up, and of course live timing will update as soon as we head over the Sector 1 boarding. So Verstappen left to take Heilmann and Vede. Still 2 cars left to pit. They will be in, of course, this lap with just over 1 minute 30 remaining on the clock. Verstappen with a nice clear bit of air ahead. I believe Redford is the only car that is kind of going to be in his way at all as we come to Maximilian Vede. We see him coming down Skyline into the S's. Going to have to keep it very, very clean indeed. No mistakes from the virtual drivers by TX3. He's going to have to maximize this pit stop as much as he can. And this man here as well, our very own Benjamin Heilmann, in a very similar coloured car to Verstappen. Very easy to kind of mix these 2 cars up. So boys, next week, if you could change one of your aux lights on the roof for us broadcasters, that would be much appreciated. But Vede coming down Conrad now towards the chase. He's going to have to make sure this pit stop is inch perfect. He's going to have to be on the limiter, right on the white line, in straight in the box, no adjusting, straight up 1 litre, back down, ignition fired, and on his way as we see a little stop go 30 from Matthew Kingston Lee. That would be probably for speeding in the pit lane as Vede here hangs to driver's left in over the yellow line. Very tight chicane, very easy to kind of mess it up as the TV camera isn't particularly great as we flick to the helicam. Very clean entry, and Benjamin Heilmann following suit cuts the chicane on the outside, trying to carry as much speed as he can up to the pit speed limiter line. Hopefully both of these guys absolutely on their marks. Verde still in his box. Christoph Verstappen here underneath the Maguire's Bridge towards Murray's Corner. 1 minute 39 on the clock. This will, of course, be the last lap for these guys as Verstappen comes across the line. Look to your right. That is where you'll see the pit lane. We're looking for a green Ginetta and a black and yellow Ginetta rounding turn 1, looking to the right-hand side. Nobody at all. Christoph Verstappen to the lead has played an absolute blinder on strategy, and Wolf Matuszka comes out ahead of Verde as well, Kevin.
Oh, wow, that's quite some undercut. Well, I say undercut, they both pitted right at the end of the race, but I did not expect Wolf Matuszka to come out ahead of Vede with the gap that was there, so he must have had one hell of an outlap in order to do that. So I'm actually quite happy that even this late in the evening, my maths are still on point and that Verstappen has taken the lead.
Yeah, certainly so. Numbers are your game, Kevin, proving very successful indeed. Looking towards the pit stop timer, Verstappen 50 seconds on the lane versus Wolf Matuszka's 39 seconds. Vede with 43 and Heilmann with 40. Sundstrom with 43 as well. So Verstappen with the slowest stop has managed to find his way to the front of the grid by nailing in some absolute brilliant lap times as Mikael Sundstrom now on the back of Benjamin Heilmann, all to play for, coming over the top of the mountain into McPhillamy Park, down the other side into Skyline. Sundstrom to the inside, not quite alongside enough to make a lunge as these guys now stand on the brakes, switching back left and right as they cascade down the hill through the Shannon sponsored section. It looks like Mikael Sundstrom there maybe rubbing the wall down into the dipper into Forest Elbow on the exit, and contact. Heilmann gets run into the back or possibly by Sundstrom. Sundstrom looks like he's going to be waiting up slightly to allow Heilmann the position back. But of course some damage now on Heilmann's car, and of course Broikers in the background there. Nothing to do with this fight, but Mark Elgaard surprisingly up into P6 as well. What a fantastic drive by the Dane. Not seen a lot of him all race. Kind of saw him early on in the mid-pack and then nothing, and now he's, P6. Redford pulls alongside, allowing Christoph Verstappen to come through. The number 7 Ginetta driver taking victory at the mountain, Mount Panorama. Well done to you, Christoph Verstappen. Excellent drive indeed. And Wolf Matuszka comes through in a well-deserved P2. Maximilian Vede in P3. And this battle is yet to be finished. Heilmann and Sundstrom to the line. Sundstrom just pips Heilmann to the line. Very unfortunate from Stewie. He's going to be possibly kicking himself a little bit there. We know Stewie does get very fired up in these scenarios. So great to see Mark Elgard, the Dane, coming through in P6 in the Pro class. Andy Boardman, very early pit stopper, managed to make it back to P7. Jimenez, I believe, P8. Jan Yo in the terrifying car, P9. Oliver Hagstrom, big issue, P10. And Daniel Jim in P11. And now our silver winner, Dominic Fekete, in the number 37, extending his championship lead, crosses the line to take silver honours. Christian Lindgren next in line. Again, a fantastic drive from the Swede. Ted Edwards in the November-themed Pigeon rounds out the bottom step of your podium. Again, a great drive from all drivers up and down the field today, Kevin. We've seen some great scenes, we've seen some big losers at the start, but then we've seen them claw their way back, and it proves how unpredictable the mountain can be.
Yeah, with people suddenly losing their car, going wide, hitting a wall somewhere, all like we saw with Verstappen, hitting the wall, going for a longer pit than everyone else, and then just pushing through some amazing laps in order to take the victory. You see a lot of different things here. But I will also say, with the cleaner battles that we saw, amazing. Like, I'd say big shout out to Ted Edwards and Lindgren for that amazing fight they had going through the cutter and up the quarry. Because wow, that was amazing. The cutting back, how close and clean they kept it. That was an example for a lot of drivers.
Yeah, certainly so. And I believe stewards are going to be slightly less stressed, hopefully, than last week, as we see a stewards report coming in from lap 27, turn 19. Heilmann and Sundstrom, as they came together, coming on to the Conrad straight. 15 seconds for the 899 for taking out the 796, although position returned, so that will be unfortunately shown in the pre-race results, which of course shoves Sundstrom down to P6, which promotes obviously Heilmann back up into P4. And Mark Elgard, surprisingly, takes a top 5 finish. So great to see all drivers, up and down the field, really catering themselves to the mountain. And next week, kind of, Snetterton, not really a circuit that you think is going to be technically challenging, but having driven it a few times in various series, it's not an easy circuit to master. I don't know how you feel, Kevin.
No, I think if you look at sector 1 and 2, there are some corners there where they've got a little trick to them, but most of it is still quite a straightforward racetrack with your typical corners. I will say, once you get into those last couple of corners, sector 3 with the big right-hander and then the acute left-hander at the end of that, that takes some skill. And I think, especially in qualifying, a lot of time can be won or lost in that last left-hander. If you don't get that one correctly, you're going to drop back.
Yeah, certainly so. I mean, Snetterton is going to be, again, another circuit, not a very long circuit, so qualifying is going to be super interesting if we do have the same amount of cars that we had tonight, 30 plus cars. 40 have, of course, qualified. So, I mean, if all 40 cars turn up at Snetterton, it's going to be absolute chaos next week, and I certainly cannot wait for it. Unfortunately, after our Zolder result with the stewards and the record-breaking number of incidents, we have ditched the 30-minute sprint race format with the 2 races that we did have at Zolder. Every single race for the foreseeable in the calendar has been switched to what we saw tonight, a 1-hour endurance, if you like, in quotation marks. And it has provided some excellent racing, as always, here at RCI. And just a quick message from our partners. Of course, along the bottom of the screen, we have AK Informatica for providing our server solutions here at RCI. However, they also do provide high-end hardware, peripherals, and accessories, including SIM gear, as Ryan Mawson slightly falls through the floor. Driver61.com. You could, of course, get 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code, link in the description below, and head on over to driver61.com. And lastly, but not least, Fanatec, your one-stop shop for all the best sim racing equipment on the market. You can, of course, use our affiliate link in the description if you're looking to pick up anything, and it won't cost you a single penny, but it does help us with some small running costs here at RCI. And, of course, kudos to everybody tonight who has chipped in to make this broadcast viable, including Ryan Mawson behind the cameras, of course, Kevin Boss alongside me, and all the stewards in the box that have made a very, very quick exit. I've never seen the stewards box empty so fast, so obviously wanting to get off to bed very early tonight, but kudos to anyone who, of course, gives up their time. And if you are interested in getting involved at RCI at any point, we do, of course, have some vacancies available. Head on over to our Discord if you're looking to help out with stewarding or anything, commentating, broadcasting. If you've fancied your hand at it for many few years but haven't, like myself, then, jump on in, give it a go. You never know where it might go. And Kevin is certainly fathom to that one as well. But fantastic race tonight from up and down the field. Pro drivers fighting. Great comeback drive from Christoph Verstappen. And, of course, everybody else towards the top end. And even the silver guys putting on a great show. I can't wait to see what they do next time out at Snetterton. But from myself, John Dalton, from my co-caster, Kevin Boss, and from Ryan Mawson behind the cameras, and, of course, all the stewards that did turn up, and anybody behind the scenes at RCI, we bid you all farewell, have a good night, and enjoy the rest of your week.